I am not suicidal. Okay, I don't care what they paint it to be. I did not. Um, Tonight we are going to be exposing one of the most powerful financial playhouses in all of the world. This is above the Federal Reserve. This is above the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. This is above the European Central Bank. This is above the International Monetary Fund. Tonight, what we will be bringing to the light is the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks. I'm going to try to go through this because I talk about the BIS a lot for you guys, and I don't think people really understand exactly who this player is. We're gonna get into it. All right. Most people never stop and think about who actually runs the money. Some people think it's the Federal Reserve. They hear inflation rates and see Jerome Powell on TV, and they think that that's the story. That's the guy. But that is the illusion. We've been trained to believe that those faces on the screen are the ones that are actually in control. And here's the thing. Those are puppet masters. Those are the spokesmen. The system doesn't start with them, and it certainly doesn't end with those individuals either. They carry out the policies that are already written somewhere else, and most people never to think where those policies come from in the first place. People love to talk about politics. They love to talk about the left, the right, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, and they'll spend hours arguing about who's to blame for the economy. But almost nobody ever asks who actually sets the rules for the entire economy to run on. They look for people to blame. And if you follow the chain long enough, you'll start to realize that politicians don't print the money. They don't issue credit. They don't control interest rates. They are simply just presenting it to you. They are simply just reacting to it. When the Fed raises or lowers the rates, Wall Street jumps. And when inflation spikes, the new blame starts to get pushed over to whoever's in office. And I want you guys to understand that this is surface level distraction. Because it's all theoretical, it's all theater, it's all bullshit. The real decisions that shape the global financial system, how much liquidity actually exists, how the currencies are stabilized, and how crises are handled, none of those decisions are actually handled and discussed in Washington, D.C. They are quietly made halfway across the world in meetings that you will never see televised. The average person still believes money begins and ends with the Federal Reserve, and that's a fucking lie. You might have heard of the International Monetary Fund or even the World Bank, and maybe that's where some people believe the money stops there. That's where some people's thinking stops. And we're still working up the pyramid. But the truth is that the people who actually control the money sits much, much higher than that. There is an institution out there that never gets airtimed, never gets questioned by politicians, and rarely gets mentioned in the schools or in documentaries. You will not find people publicly debating on it on the news. You'll never hear people talking about it. But everything from the dollars in your wallet to the credit cards that run the credit card markets that run global trade. They all flow through the same framework in this one system that this organization in particular sets. They don't operate outside of Washington, D.C., London, or even Wall Street. They operate from it's literally a tower in Basel, Switzerland. And the people who meet inside of that tower, they're not CEOs, they are not hedge fund managers, they are the central bankers that govern every single central banker and policy below it. These are who the central bankers and every government answer to. Most people, when they first hear about it, they think that it's a conspiracy. They think that it's wild because they were taught that every country runs its own financial system, that the Federal Reserve controls the United States, and the European Central Bank controls Europe, and the Bank of England controls Britain. But that's not the truth. What if I told you that they all get their guidance from one single place? What if I told you that there's one institution above all those central banks that actually writes the global playbook? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is called the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, and we talk about it a lot. And you've probably never heard about it, or if you have seen me expose some of the programs that they run, you know that I try to find the breadcrumbs for where we are going, because they are adopting DLT technology. The BIS stays in the background for a reason, because the less people that know about it, the easier it is to steer the system without any other types of interruptions. And that's exactly what they've done. They've been around since the 1930s. And every major shift in the global financial order, whether it was the creation for new banking standards, the coordination of different interest rate policies, or even the way that the crisis, I don't even know, the way that the crises are managed, all of them, they go back to Basel, Switzerland. And that's exactly where the world central bankers meet behind closed doors. I think it's like 5 to 6 to 7 times a year they go there. There's no cameras, there's no press, there's no minutes. They don't release any information on it. And those are the meetings that shape the economy for every single country on earth. So when people say that the system is rigged, they're right. They're right, but it's not in the way that most people think. It's not rigged by politicians. It's not even rigged by Wall Street. It's structured by the people who built it. And those people, they meet in Switzerland 6 times a year. So this is where we're going to start to actually jump in, because once you understand who the BIS is and what role they play, the entire picture of money starts to make sense. You'll start to see the patterns. You'll start to realize why things never really change, no matter who's in office, because the game is not political, but it's architectural. And the BIS is the actual architect. So the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks. It's an institution. It's an institution that is at the top of the pyramid in the global financial system. But that's literally what it is. They are the central bank of central banks. The BIS, they don't deal with the public. They don't lend to small banks. It doesn't print your money, but it tells the people how to do it. Every major central bank, whether it's the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the People's Bank of China, the Bank of Japan, all of them are members in the BIS. They meet there. They discuss the future policies that they're going to implement, and they all follow the particular framework that is written at the BIS. So anytime you hear that the global banks are moving together, or that a policy is being coordinated from the central bank of central banks, it's structured, it's organized, it's perfectly orchestrated, it's perfectly manipulated. All of it is coming from the BIS. And it's literally a tower. Inside of the tower in Switzerland, the most powerful bankers in the world meet behind closed doors. And to be honest with you, the BIS is untouchable. Absolutely untouchable. They're not under any country's jurisdictions. They're not governed by the UN or the EU or any other law. It's something that they have something called sovereign immunity, and it means that nothing within the buildings can be searched. Its records cannot be seized. Its assets cannot be taxed. Its employees cannot be prosecuted. Not even the Swiss police can walk inside of that tower without permission. I want you to understand who it is we're talking about. This just might be the banking cartel. Think about that for a second. An institution that sets the financial rules for the entire world has full immunity and zero public oversight. No votes, no accountability, no transparency. Yet, every single decision that they make affects the cost of your groceries, your mortgage rates, the value of your savings, everything. Everything. That is not a democracy. Nope. At the top of this pyramid sits the BIS. Underneath that, you have the central banks, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, Bank of England. And then under them are your national banks, your commercial banks, your credit unions. And then under that is you. You are the bottom of the pyramid. You slaves. So when the BIS goes in there and wants to change global policy, like how much capital a bank can hold, that decision goes from the top all the way down. Wall Street's balance your credit cards to interest rates, all of that. The BIS has tentacles in every aspect of finance. And most people don't notice it because it's not loud. It's not something that ever makes headlines. It's not something you will ever see the news talk about. The BIS does not make headlines, but they make the frameworks. They create the standards, like Basel Accord. It's basically the playbook that every financial institution has to follow. The standards decide what counts as a safe investment or how much leverage the banks can actually use and how much risk is measured globally. So I don't know if you guys heard about Basel III, but that's another thing that was mentioned under the Basel Accords. Basically, after the 2008 financial crisis, the BIS created this rule book called Basel III. And when that was implemented, trillions of dollars shifted to meet these new requirements because they can. That's the type of control the central bank of central banks has. It literally is structure. Every major economy needs to participate in the global finance, but they can't do it without the BIS. So what do? They all fall in line. The BIS doesn't have to boss anyone around. It just writes the rules, and everyone has to play in it to participate in it. So once you start to understand the whole idea of national currency, that idea starts to fucking completely erode. It's gone. You realize that the Fed doesn't really act independently. It acts within coordination because it's not independent. It depends on the central bank of central banks. The playbook is not written in DC. It's not written by Jerome Powell. Nope. It's written in Switzerland. And that's why interest rates move the way that they do in multiple countries. That's why liquidity crises get the same response all around the world. That's why every financial solution sounds identical no matter what nation announces it. It all comes from one place, one tower, one institution. And that's the part that they will never teach in schools. Because this is the hierarchy that controls your life, whether you realize it or not. I think that if people ever did wake up to the system, they would realize how little control they have over their money, and they would probably lose faith in their government because they would realize the government nor the central bank, the Federal Reserve, actually has control over their money. But all of it is orchestrated. And this is kind of where it gets a little deep, guys. The BIS isn't just managing Wall Street. They're not just making frameworks. They're not just managing the old money. They've been around since 1930. But we can prove, and we have, that they are issuing the new financial system. They are building the new financial system. They are the ones that are designing it. So this is where we're going to start to actually jump into everything else that follows within this exposure of them. Because the BIS isn't just managing spreadsheets or picking up the phone, calling central bankers, telling them what to do. No. They're rewriting the blueprint for the new financial system. And if you could guess, if only you could guess, what tech stack they're building that on, maybe you would start to pay attention to the architecture, because the tech stack is blockchain. So now that you guys understand who actually sits at the top, I want to go down the entire structure of how it actually works, because most people think that it's separate, right? The Fed, the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, the World Bank, They think it's all separated, but it's not. It's actually all connected. It's one fucking circus. It's one fucking circus. And the power doesn't actually flow from the governments down. It flows from Basel, Switzerland out. So the BIS was created in 1930, and it was originally created to manage the reparations from World War One. That's the story that they tell, at least. Germany owed money, and the Allies needed a neutral bank to handle the payments. So they set up the BIS in Switzerland. Pretty simple explanation, right? The public would buy it if the public ever looked into it. But those reparations stopped only 2 years later. And by 1932, the job that the BIS was created for was complete. It was done. And instead of shutting the BIS down, they kept it alive. They kept it alive for almost the next 100 years. And that's when the real purpose actually started to begin. It transformed from a clearinghouse into a control center. It was a meeting place for central bankers, safe from politics, safe from accountability, safe from any other kind of interference, safe from the exposure of the public. And even during World War II, when the world was literally split in half, central bankers from both sides still met in Switzerland. Think about that. While soldiers were dying in the battlefields, the people who ran the money still gathered in the same building to keep the financial system running smoothly. That's how deep this structure goes. It sits above wars. It sits above governments. It sits above politics. It sits above everything else. Now, after World War II ended, the world rebuilt its financial order. And that's basically when the International Monetary Fund kind of came into the playbook. Most people think that the IMF runs the global economy, but the IMF is just one layer below the BIS. And the BIS designs the frameworks, and the IMF helps implement them on a national level. So here's how this works, right? The BIS creates the standards, things like risk management, liquidity requirements, and the way that capital actually is controlled. And the International Monetary Fund enforces those ideas through policy advisors and financial programs. So whenever a country is dealing with a financial crisis, the IMF steps in. They're not really stepping in on their own accord, but they're stepping in according to the BIS's frameworks. And then somewhere around a little bit into 2009, right after the 2008 financial crisis, the BIS created another group called the FSB, which is the Financial Stability Board. And the FSB's job was to prevent another global collapse. But in reality, it kind of acted like a fucking like a military command center for all crisis managements. And when that next financial shock happens, and it will, the FSB is going to coordinate how the central bankers are supposed to respond. They already have the templates already made. Everything is all pre-orchestrated. They know exactly how to deal with the solution when the problem arrives. So they can, I guess, deal with it promptly. That's why we always say that they create the solution, they create the problem, and then they usher in that solution. So that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at the structure, and it's been evolving for the last 100 years. And the BIS sits at the top. They write the rules. The IMF manages the countries and helps implement those rules. The FSB controls the global response during the crisis. And below that is all your central banks, all of your financial institutions, all of the financial market infrastructures. And then below that is you. So when we connect what is going on today, we are witnessing the digital era get introduced from the BIS down. That's why it's important to pay attention to what the central bank of central banks is. The BIS knows that the current system is outdated. They know that it's breaking down. The debt levels are unsustainable. The currencies are inflating faster than economies can even grow. Liquidity is stretched beyond God's earth. They know that the paper system has reached its limit. I believe coins Somebody sent me this. I believe coins have been around 600 BC, 600 years before Christ, and paper currency has been around 600 years after Christ. Think about that. Coins and paper, the same thing that's in your couch cushions, have been around since Jesus Christ. So there is an upgrade coming. There's an absolute upgrade coming. And all of the new adoption that the BIS is coming out with, it's basically their innovation, right? The BIS has an innovation hub where they create these pilots to implement what is coming next. And the innovation hub are the ones that are building that new infrastructure for that digital monetary system. We're not talking about one particular coin. We're not talking about one particular stable coin, one country's CBDCs. Nope. We're talking about how the money is programmable, how the money is traceable, how the money is tokenized on distributed ledger technology. And the BIS says it in their own reports. They say that the future monetary system is going to be digital. Not might be digital, that it will be digital. So who has the authority to lead that? It's going to be the BIS. They've been publishing papers for years on it. Tokenization, cross-border interoperability, private CBDCs. They've been testing it through real projects with the central banks. This is happening right now. So they may say interoperability, and I think that interoperability is the foundation for everything else that follows, because that's how we connect the new system to the old system. The interoperability is basically what bridges the banks to the ledgers to the blockchains. And I don't know, can you guess who's been building that technology for the last 10 years? The same networks that everybody calls altcoins, right? The BIS isn't just setting up a new payment system. They are setting up an entirely new architecture for global finance. And only a few digital assets are designed to fit inside of it. So that's why this moment, this particular moment in time, matters more than what people realize. This isn't about whether crypto goes up or down next week. It doesn't matter whether or not we're going into a bear market or a bull market. Nope. It's about who survives the migration from the old system into that new system. The BIS, the IMF, and the FSBs, they're not experimenting anymore. The DTCC says the time for the proof of concepts is over. It's over. They're doing it through pilots. They're doing it through partnerships. And the new messaging standards like ISO 222, all of them, they're aligning every single central bank on the planet to one common format, one digital language for money. And that's where we're going to jump into, is how they're actually building that new system. How the technologies that they're using connects directly to the assets that we've been studying for years. So let's talk about what has the BIS been doing. Because this is where everything actually starts to click. Everything actually starts to connect. Now that we know who sits at the top of the pyramid, we know how they coordinate the rules that every central bank follows. But what most people still don't know is that the BIS is the ones that are driving the digital transformation of money themselves. They're not reacting to crypto. They're not reacting to the price action. They're not reacting to the top movers. They're not even watching it from the sidelines. But they are the ones that are building the new system using the same technology that powers crypto. And they've been doing it for almost 10 years. And the people that have been doing it, their name is the Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub. And that is basically their lab. That's their plan table. It is a global network of central bankers, engineers, economists, and software developers. All of them are working together to design the new financial system, the new future of money. They're not just talking about it. No. They're fucking building it. If you go on their website, it's all there. They have projects like Rosalind, Jura, Enbridge, Dunbar. Each one of those is a different piece to the puzzle for this new system. Project Rosalind, of course, from the BIS and the Bank of England, tested how retail central bank digital currencies could connect directly to banks and fintech applications through APIs. Programmable money. Programmable money. That is money that can interact with smart contracts. That is money that can interact with tokenized assets. You go into Project Jura. This was done from the Bank of France and I believe Switzerland. And they tested to see if they can use DLT technology to settle FX transactions. That's cross-border settlement using blockchain. And it was confirmed that it worked faster, safer, and more efficiently than the current SWIFT system. And then came Project Enbridge. And that's probably one of the biggest ones. And it's a live pilot between the BIS, the People's Bank of China, the UAE, and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And what were they building? Not discussing, but what were they building? They were testing to see if a shared blockchain where all of the central banks can actually issue and trade digital currencies directly without corresponding banks, without middlemen, without SWIFT. And guess what? It was a success. And guess what tech they did it on? They did it on DLT technology. And it's funny because most people in crypto, whenever they hear DLT technology or infrastructure, brain shuts off. When's the Lambo? They ask. When's Lambo? DLT is the infrastructure, right? It's the architecture. It's the data structure. It's the everything. When the BIS starts talking about interoperability, what they're really talking about is bridging all of the digital systems together, connecting all of the world's digital currencies into one global network where they can settle instantly. That, ladies and gentlemen, is blockchain at a global scale. And the BIS said it themselves. They said it themselves. It's in the documents. It's in the official documents. They want a unified ledger. That's their term. Not mine. Not mine. The unified ledger is basically an interconnected system where money, assets, transactions, all of them live in one connected network where it's programmable. You know, and that's why the assets that we study, Ripple, Stellar, Hedera, Quant, Chainlink, Zinfin, XDC. That's why we study that. When the BIS came out, and we did the deep dive on it, when the BIS came out with their PDF called the Future Monetary System, they literally described how tokenizing deposits, tokenizing assets, and tokenizing money can operate under a shared ledger, under global regulatory governance. Basically, everything that crypto was trying to build was there, but they did it in a compliant, controlled environment where it could scale on a global level. So when people say, why are you paying attention to the infrastructure? Why does that matter? We're trying to get rich. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You try to get rich without actually understanding where your money comes from or who controls it. Because the ones that actually run the global financial systems, they're the ones that are adopting DLT technology. Those are the ones that matter. And the ones that will survive after regulations are going to be the ones that have the speed, the ones that are able to scale, the ones that have the security, the ones that have programmability built into it, the ones that have trust. Those are going to be the ones that survive. So This is what this is what we've been studying. This is exactly what we've been studying all along. When the BIS says interoperability or tokenization or programmable money, there's a reason for it. It's all tied together. And that's exactly why we study the ISO digital assets, because those are the ones that have been following the frameworks and the principles from day one. It's not a coincidence that those same terms appear in the white papers, those same terms appear in the patents, and those same terms appear in the pilot programs, right? Interoperability, tokenization, programmable money. When you take a look at Ripple's cross-border payment model, the way that they designed their cross-border payments, it's an exact carbon copy. It's an exact example of what Project Enbridge was trying to build. Instant value transfers without corresponding banks, without the middlemen. When you look at Stellar's digital identity, that's the same thing when the BIS says programmable retail integration. Or what about XDC when they start working in tokenizing trade finance? Isn't that the same thing that the BIS is talking about when they want to implement DLT technology into global trade documents? What about Hedera? What about Hedera HBAR? Right? Hedera HBAR. It's the DLT for tokenization. Even Hedera's integration in with quantum resistance and AI and payments even. Right? Hedera is very well rounded. The BIS keeps talking about it. Quant's Overledger. I think it might just be one of the biggest out of all of them, to be honest with you. That's the interoperability itself, connecting the traditional financial systems to the new ones through the APIs. The same way Project Rosalind was testing them. Not by accident, not just, hey, look at what we're doing. Nope. The infrastructure was being built from day one with this financial shift in mind. When the BIS moves their projects from pilots to production, guess what technologies are already built and ready to plug into them? Take a guess. The same ones that your retail investors still don't understand? Is it going to be Pepe? Is it going to be Shiba? Take a guess which ones are going to be ready to go and plugged into the BIS's digital frameworks. So when I say only a few cryptos are going to survive, that is what I mean. The BIS doesn't need tens of thousands of random tokens. Nope. They need interoperability rails that are compliant, scalable, and connected, and trustworthy. And that is where our research has always been focused on. Because once you realize that the central bank of central bankers above the Federal Reserve, they're not fighting blockchain. They are the ones that are implementing it, redesigning it, drawing the blueprints, and building it. That, once you understand that, that's when you stop treating crypto like it's a fucking casino. And you start to treat it like it's infrastructure. You start studying the systems that can integrate, not the ones that are built on speculation and hype. That's what separates investors from gamblers. The gamblers are chasing the trends. The investors are studying the blueprints. And the BIS has been drawing the blueprints in front of us for years. Have you been paying attention? The BIS is rewriting the entire global system on DLT rails. Not every crypto is going to make it. Most of them won't. And I'm really not trying to fear monger you guys, but that's just fucking logic. That is just what's going to happen. The BIS doesn't care about hype. They don't care about what coins are being built around meme coins, or which ones can you stake, or where can I get a good return. They don't care about the pump and dump culture. Nope. They're designing a monetary network that's meant and built to move trillions of dollars safely, instantly, and across borders. You think that they're going to build You think they're going to build that on the same infrastructure that retail traders are gambling on? You honestly believe they're going to move trillions of dollars on the same rails that retail traders are gambling on? Not a fucking chance. Not a fucking chance. They're choosing compliance. They're choosing efficiency. They're choosing scalability. They're choosing trust. They're choosing the ones that can work. And when you look closely, you can already see what technologies are aligning with the BIS. Ripple works with banks and ISO 222 messages. Is that a fucking coincidence? The exact standard that the BIS has been rolling out for global payments. What is XRP's purpose? It's bridging currencies, isn't it? The same goal that every BIS cross-border pilot has. Stellar's digital rails. The way that they connect to the United Nations. What about XDC's trade finance tokenization with the TFD? Straight out of the BIS's roadmaps for DLT and global trade finance. It's there. It's all online. It's all documented. What about Hedera tokenizing carbon credit frameworks? No? Didn't the BIS publish papers on green finance tokenization that match exactly what Hedera is rolling out? And Quant's Overledger, the interoperability that connects it all, the interoperability is probably the most single piece, the most important piece of the pie. Without interoperability, you don't have settlement. Without interoperability, you still have fragmentations. Traditional finance and your DLT technologies are still operating in silos. Without interoperability, you have nothing. You have nothing. Interoperability is the layer that connects the old system to the new system. Isn't that the same thing that the BIS is trying to solve? No? So when I say that the projects are chosen, I'm not guessing this. I'm not fucking guessing. They're solving the exact problems that the people at the BIS are trying to fix. They speak the right language already. They are compliant. They have the ability to scale. They have that interoperability. They have the settlement speed. And they have the trust. And the rest of the market? Focused on what? What the fuck is the rest of the market focused on? Tens of thousands of coins fighting and chasing for your attention. Fighting and chasing for liquidity, for retail liquidity that doesn't even fucking exist. And when regulations finally hit the market, and it will, most of it will get completely wiped out. Because this new architecture doesn't need retail liquidity. It doesn't need retail attention. That's why I always tell people, stop asking what's the next 100x project. Or when's the Lambo, or the price action is crap. What you should be asking is which networks can actually plug into the multi-trillion-dollar systems that's being built from the central bankers. That's the only question that matters. When you take a look at retail liquidity, it's child's play. It's peanuts. It's fucking peanuts. People are so focused on retail liquidity that they don't even realize trillion-dollar institutions are looking to adopt DLT technology. And what rails are they going to utilize? That's what you should be finding out for yourself. That's what you should be finding out for yourself. And it's funny because there's a lot of people in the crypto community who still think that crypto is about this rebellion. It's about fighting the banks. Wake up. Wake up. The truth is, the technology behind crypto, that is what's being adopted from the banks. The banks looked at what worked, the transparent ones, the ones they could trust, the ones that could scale, the ones that actually have the settlement, which ones are efficient, and they said, we want that part. And now they're fucking adopting it. And it's just a matter of time. That's what the BIS is doing. They're not in here picking apart and destroying blockchain. Nope, nope, nope. They put a fucking leash on it. They're domesticating it, and they're saying there are ones that are chosen. There are ones that are going to survive. There are ones that won't. They're bringing it inside of the system, putting rules around it, and they're building their own versions. That's why understanding the infrastructure, and I know everyone says it's boring, but that's why understanding the infrastructure early is so important. Because once institutional money starts to move across these rails, the public, they're going to watch it. They're going to watch it. The same people that were preaching about utility, the same people that were preaching about institutional money coming on, the ones that were mocked, those are going to be the ones that win. Those are going to be the ones that win. Taking on the utility side, it's not a favorable position. It's not. You have to be comfortable with being disliked by holding utility assets. You have to have the courage and the ability to be disliked. Because most retail are so short-sighted. They want that get rich quick. This is the cycle. I got to get in. I need the Lambo. My life's got to change now. They want that instant gratification. And when you tell somebody, it might take 5 years. It might take 7 years. It might take 10 years. They can't wait that. As if they're not going to work at their job for fucking 10 years anyway. But the people who studied the infrastructure, the ones who read the BIS reports, the ones who connected the dots between the pilots and the ISO networks, they already know what is coming. And they're not guessing. They're not guessing. They're watching all of it be implemented and adopted. That is why conviction matters. Because when the hype dies, when your favorite project stops getting talked about, when regulations get implemented and 90% of the market gets crushed, the only thing left standing is going to be the networks that actually move value the way that the system is requiring them to move. And that's what I've been talking about from day one. Utility over speculation. People laugh at the infrastructure plays. Fuck them. Let them. Not everybody's going to win. Cobb salad now. Because once you know where the real money moves, you don't need tweets. You don't need trends. You don't have to pay influencers to push a coin. You pay attention to the rails. And when those rails are being rebuilt directly underneath the BIS, using the same DLT architecture that powers the very financial system that you currently partake in, that is generational wealth. And that is what you're choosing to ignore. That's what you're choosing to ignore. That's the shift. That's the financial reset. And only the ones who are ready for it are going to be the ones who understand why the networks actually exist and how they fit into the blueprints that the BIS has been drawing up. So, if you zoom out far enough, everything starts to make sense, connecting all of the dots. You start to realize that it was never about politics. It was never about who was in office. It's about who writes the rules and whose rules have to be followed. The BIS was there in 1930 to manage the war reparations from World War I. It was there in 1940, bringing both sides of the war together to talk about the financial infrastructure. And it was there in 2008, coordinating the global bailout while politicians were arguing on TV, pointing fingers at each side. And it's here right now, shaping the digital system that's going to replace everything that you know. It's going to touch everything that you know. It's funny, most people think that it's random events. In case you haven't realized, every time they usher in the solution, it's the same ones that are creating the problem. They create the problem and then they usher in the solution. And CV19 was a perfect example for it. Wake up. It's not random. They're following the playbook. It's basically a fucking checkpoint. It's basically a checkpoint. All of it properly planned. The BIS sets the rules, the IMF enforces it, and the FSB coordinates once things actually start to break down. That's the triangle that runs the show. Everything else, it's just following the show. That is how our economy turns digital. That is going to be the biggest shift in the history of finance. And most people don't even know that it's happening. They don't even see it. They say, why do I need to know who the DTCC is? Why do I need to know what the BIS is? Why do I need to know what the IMF is? Why do I need to care what the World Economic Forum is talking about? They think that the next bull run or the next bear market is what really matters. That's the fucking distraction. Hello, wake up. Aren't you paying attention to the story that's actually being developed? The BIS is connecting central banks to one another on DLT technology. They're creating the financial infrastructure where every asset, every currency, every transaction can move in real time across borders. Don't you want to figure out which ones are going to be integrated into that? Don't you want to figure out what blockchains are going to survive 10, 15, 20 years? Which ones are going to survive with regulations? You got to stop chasing the noise. You got to stop chasing the hype. You need to pay attention to the infrastructure, the foundation. Because once you understand the architecture of the system, you stop being surprised by it. You stop reacting to the headlines. You stop blaming whoever's on the fucking news. Because you see the patterns. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You realize that everything was perfectly coordinated. CBDC pilots, the ISO 222 migration, tokenization of bonds, green finance, all of that. All of it's fucking connected. It's the same plan. It's the same plan. They want to move money. They want to move value into one interconnected system. The unified ledger. Hello? Figure out who the unified ledger is. Don't you think that's fucking important? The future monetary system. And guess what, guys? Our technology is the backbone of that. That's why paying attention to the infrastructure matters. That's why learning about it matters. Because the people who understand the plumbing will always have advantage over the people who just look at the surface, over the people who just look at the headlines, over the people who will buy into it after it's proven itself. The people that will buy into it after the price appreciation. You can't outtrade the institutions. Sorry, you can't. You can position yourself on the proper side of the new financial reset. The old system is changing. It's slow. It's expensive. Don't you get it? They are upgrading the new system. And the new one's already been tested. And when it goes live, people are going to say, it's a revolution. Oh my God, this is great. It was fucking planned. It was planned and we saw it. That is why we study the infrastructure. That is why we talk about ISO coins. That is why we talk about interoperability. That is why we talk about regulations and compliance. Because that's the future. Not hype, not speculation. Connecting the breadcrumbs. The BIS is connecting them right now. And the rails that they're building are the same rails that we are positioned for. It's the same rails that we front ran them. We are preparing for it to go live. The question isn't what is the world going to go digital? What happens to money? Nope. The real question you should be asking yourself is that, are you going to be a spectator? Or are you going to be one of the few who saw the blueprint before it was built? Are you going to sit on the sidelines watching it? Or are you going to position yourself properly before that institutional liquidity comes in? Because once the hype dies down, once the headlines, the news starts picking up on it, the people who already studied the system unfazed, unemotional, stoic, they're not going to be surprised because they will be positioned. They'll understand exactly how and why this happened. That's what I want you to do. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to push conspiracies. I want to show you the truth that's been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Because once you understand the system, you stop becoming a victim of it. You stop depending on the government. You stop blaming politicians. You stop waiting for someone else to fix it. You prepare yourself. That is what the entire crypto journey is about. Positioning yourself properly. Understanding the architecture, the plumbing that makes the entire system work, that is how you position yourself properly. The BIS is writing the blueprints for the next financial system. The International Monetary Fund and the FSB are helping orchestrate it. The technologies that they're adopting, the distributed ledger technologies, the interoperability standards, those are the ones we've been studying. It's funny, people want to laugh at you for talking about XRP, XLM, HBAR, QNT, XDC, Algorand, Chainlink, ICP. Those are the people that are reading headlines. Those are the people that are looking at price action. They want to measure the success of price action. Study the blueprints, learn the system before it goes live. Because one day all of us are going to wake up into a new financial system. It's going to be faster. It's going to be digital. All of it is going to be tokenized. It's going to be programmable. And people are going to think that they flipped a switch. It just happened overnight. They built an entire new financial system under this administration. They did it like that. But hopefully, you'll be part of the small individuals that actually know the truth. You'll know that it started a decade ago in Basel, Switzerland. You'll know exactly who built it, and you'll know exactly where you stand inside of the system. Don't let anybody make you feel crazy for studying the things that they don't understand. I want you to be curious. I want you to be disciplined. I want you to grow, not only as an investor, but as a researcher. Most importantly, I want you to be early.